if at all, because they can impact your campaign world in the way that a meteorite impacts with a dinosaur. So it's been the tradition just to keep away from the gods. But I really do think that there's a lot of ways that you can bring them into your game and get a lot of use out of them. So let's talk about that. Also, before we begin, my hair is finally recovering from chemotherapy, so I'm going to try to grow it back. So that's a fun adventure we can all take together. But anyway, the gods. So gods are higher entities that control aspects of the world or the universe. Certainly the game world that your fiction takes place in. Now they might do this directly. Perhaps the gods sort of put in some effort, and that's why the sun rises. Perhaps physical or moral laws just don't exist without the gods, and that's why the sun rises. Or why we fall in love. Perhaps they are simply the consciousness of natural events or human concepts. Magic, death, disease, war, justice, hate, cruelty. They're not physical things, but they exist in the world, and therefore there is a god for them. So ultimately gods, therefore, are the concerns of mortals writ large. And that's why you see over and over in human cultures, gods exist. The same kinds of gods exist. And they have specific portfolios of concerns that are almost universal amongst all humanity. Magic, death, disease, war, justice, hate, cruelty, and so on. So if you want to, you can make up gods of itches or gods of banjos if you like. You can rule that every blade of grass, every bit of grain on sand on the beach has a god, but you won't get as much conceptual power out of it as you do with the big themes. And the power is ultimately to give your players something to either work against or to work towards. Because players are probably going to want to tie their characters to those kinds of concepts. Gods and big human ideas are powerful role-playing hooks. I serve justice. I serve hatred. And I serve mercy. And this is because in D&D, you can make those concepts alive and active. And the word we have for that, the word we have for living, huge, important concepts is gods. So let's talk about how they act, but first of all, let's talk about what they are. So typically D&D has experienced the gods and depicted the gods as remote cosmic super beings. They are distant. They are vastly powerful. They can change reality at their whims. They live on other planes of existence. They just have very, very little in common with mortal life. Their concerns are not the concerns of just anyone living in a human life or elf life or whatever. And that's fine. That really, really works. It often supports the underlying game assumptions of D&D, of the metaphysics that the rules would suggest and imply, high planescape. But it's very different from how people actually experience gods in history. Often they're just kind of people, just writ very, very large indeed. They're exaggerated, but they're nevertheless psychologically recognizable as humans. And of all things that you might have seen recently, it's Marvel's Thor, that first film especially. It's not a terrible example. He's got the power of war and thunder, and he won't age. He has far greater powers than any mortal. He's stronger and he's faster. He has this panoply of magical weapons. But he's got human weaknesses. He's impatient. He's vain. He's annoyed at his old man. He's easily tricked. If you were sort of a low wisdom fighter, you might go, wow, that's the gods for me. I see myself in that god. So because you see yourself in this god, you get excited by that and you go, okay, well, I'm going to serve that god. I think that god is like me. I'm into that. Bang. Suddenly you're in the service of a god. Or perhaps you come from a culture where you should be more into blood and thunder and war and might. So you go, okay, well, I'm going to take after Thor and serve Thor because I am not enough into blood and thunder and war. Or they're spirits, natural entities. They've become very, very powerful. Anasazi and the Loire of the voodoo are examples of this. We really only ever encounter them in ritual spaces. We need to reach out to them for them to reach out to us. And then they teach us things, they help us, they give us abilities, insight, powers maybe. That is how we experience the gods. In Guy Kay's Fionavar tapestry, he has a lot of high gods, but he also has lots of little spirits and godlings. Exalted does something similar to this as well. Nothing separates a tiny spirit of the field or the house and an ultimate super god than scope. It's just a matter of how powerful the spirit is. I like those kinds of gods. I like both those kinds of gods. Now, I tend to do a lot of historically inspired games, so I can just go, okay, well, there's God and the devil. But if you want individual gods, I say, well, you can't have those, but you can have saints, or you can have angels. And the interesting thing about that is that the players go, oh, okay, that sounds good. I'm going to choose a saint or an angel of magic or death or disease or war or justice or hate or cruelty. So those are a few examples of what the gods are. And that's actually not that important to your campaign to decide, because what they do is what counts. So what do they do? Now, some of this is just world building stuff and you don't need to get into it. But it just is useful to think about. Do prayers work? Do sacrifices? Probably. Does a god of the dawn make the dawns happen, like we talked about before? Or does the dawn make a god and power the god? If your heroes reduce tyranny in the world, do you reduce the god? Did God make mortal life? Why? Does mortal life have a purpose? Sometimes it can just be the gods are vain and like worshipped. Have a look at the theological concept, the image of God, for more on that. Well, interesting stuff. But more germane than any of that stuff is, how are they involved with the PCs? That's the only thing that really matters to you about what the gods do. Now, there's a thing in games, it's a pretty much an iron rule that it's never a good idea to overshadow the PCs with really, really powerful, dynamic and active NPCs. It's a cardinal sin, and really, just don't do it. But players really like the idea of meeting gods and hanging out with them, playing cards with them, shoving them, and gods are great long-term villains. How many fantasy books have you read where killing the god of evil is the whole point? So here's how I handle the gods interacting with PCs. Firstly, keep it light. Omens and visions. You kill a great monster, and that night the constellations seem different. That's the sign of the gods. Just you, thanking you. Your players will feel good. You have dreams of feasting with angels, and you awaken pleased and peaceful, knowing that something that you did that day was pleasing to your god. Maybe you hear a beautiful hymn that no one else can. Maybe the totem animal of your god appears before you, a great eagle or a white stag. Maybe you pray before the battle. You were expecting to fight a dragon and you dream of skulls and you realize, oh my god, I am not ready. Or maybe the gods send actual visions to guide your PCs. 3, 2, 1. One of the best moments I have ever had in my entire 13,000 year long role-playing career was I had a guy and he's playing a paladin and he's slowly slipping into darkness, and he had done something evil and he was alone and he was brooding, and so I had an old man just come and talk to him, find him on the battlefield. And the old man just sort of told him, hi son, there's nothing you ever do that's so bad that you can't come back, that you can't be redeemed. And the paladin realized that here he was with this old man with long white hair telling him you can always be forgiven, and we never said anything, but he knew it was his god. And there was this fantastic moment where he just closed his eyes and said, thank you, but it's too late. I actually felt it was a very, very powerful moment. I genuinely rate it as one of the top moments I've ever done. And if I had a hands off with the gods, it would have happened. Maybe there's something really, really important that's going to happen in the campaign. Tomorrow the Dragon Lord is going to be released. Tomorrow the king will be assassinated. Let people have huge biblical style visions, Jack Kirby style, where the hand of fate would come and write words and warnings in fire. And I genuinely think that this offstage awareness of your PCs that the gods might demonstrate is the best use for them, because it makes them feel like they're important. It makes them feel like they are playing for an audience of these amazing entities. Also, I think that you should give, especially religious concept characters, specific relationships. All warlocks love having their relationship with their patron. So if your PC revolves around a god or in power somehow, you don't want to have the god appear before them. "Quiver, mortals, I am here again. Did you find the copper pieces?" No, you don't want that. But let them have holy guardian angels who sometimes whisper to them, or totem animals who appear to give them encouragement. It allows you to have these divine forces in the game without the gods appearing on stage. And it also sets the stage for the gods actually appearing one day. Evil gods you've offended, same thing. Visions. Say you kill an evil cleric. Suddenly dark wings seem to spread across the world. Players have terrible nightmares. Owls and night wolves surround your camp, and they don't attack. They just watch you, because you've been noticed, because you've been seen by the gods of hate. And then the religious assassins are going to come and kill you, so that's fun. 3, 2, 1. We'll talk about religion, actual being in service to the gods, another time. So there you have it. Decide what your gods are. Decide what they want. Decide their relationship with the world. And then decide how much you want them to be involved. I find that having them as actually being aware of who your PCs are really makes the PCs feel special. That's how I mainly use them. Light touch, just every now and again. If the PCs know the eyes of the gods are with us, it's a great experience for them. And also it's really fun to roleplay as a DM. Get into it. Alright, please do subscribe. Please do give us a like button. It's actually really, really useful. Thank you very, very much. I'm Christian. I'll see you next time.